Good evening and welcome to ongoing coverage of election season, general election season. We're doing primary forums for the primary election that will happen on August 9th. I believe you can go now to your town clerk and get a ballot or request an absentee ballot. It's important to know that if you are going to vote in the August primary, which we hope you do, you will not see a ballot mailed to you for this. You will see a ballot mailed in the general election, but you will not see a ballot mailed to you for the primary election. With us tonight is Peter Duval, who's running against Phil Scott, and I should know the name of the other candidate, and I do not
Stephen
have.
Bellows.
Thank you. In the Republican primary. So again, these folks are running to receive the Republican nomination to sit on the ballot for the general election. So Peter, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And if the opening statement is just to let us know your name, your party affiliations, who's supporting you, and why you're running.
I'm Peter Duval. I grew up in Essex and I've lived in Vermont almost all of my life, short trips abroad, time abroad. I put my name on I got my name on the Republican ballot so that I could have, early debates with Phil Scott, but he's not interested in campaigning or debating. So my fusion campaign, which is a political science term, is really to get votes from all corners. So I'm not just seeking votes from the Republican primary ballot, but from on any ballot that anyone decides to use. You just write in my name on the primary ballot for Progressive Party or the Democratic Party. And I would love to have, I'd love to be nominated by all three parties. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Of course, that's not going to happen. But it's something that can happen in Vermont. There are other candidates who do get fusion nominations, particularly between the Democratic and Progressive parties now. But the Republican Democratic candidates have also done fusion candidacies. Jim Douglas is the last one I remember.
So I have a question, sort of following up on that. And I know we have a series of questions to get through, but we can also have a more relaxed conversation since you don't have an opponent here. Do you plan to run in the general election, regardless of how, if you get elected in the primary?
Well, the principal reason for running is to affect the debate, change the words and way of thinking about political questions that are before us. So I went for the race that seemed to have the opportunity to do that, and nobody else is showing up for the campaign. So it looks like I will have to run as an independent in the general election in order to get some time debating and in the media.
So let's head into these questions. The state pension, and there was a state pension reform bill that was passed. I'm wondering if you thought about this at all. Maybe one way to approach it is, if you were governor, would you have supported that state pension reform bill? Would you have vetoed it the way the governor did? What's your opinion? What's your approach to approaching, what's your position on approaching state pension shortfalls and the budget crunch?
I was kind of surprised that he would try to veto something that was veto proof, but that there's a serious problem, and I'm still confused about how it developed, because there are a lot of interested parties, and to allow us the shortfall to develop over decades, really, means that a lot of people were either not aware that there was a problem, or they were aware and didn't want to tell anybody. And it would seem to me that if I were in the union, I'd be pretty upset with the union for not keeping track of this. So I want to know more about this. I want to know how it developed and why the shortfalls accumulated over time. To me, I always want to look at all of the issues with an eye to the environmental aspects of it. What does the Earth-oriented perspective say about having pensions, and retiring even, and what is the intergenerational effect? And for the pensions to accumulate such a debt over time, and then turn on suddenly a correction, seems like real inequity between generations. And that seems to be happening in so many ways. I mean, any kind of pollution is an intergenerational inequity. Any kind of resource depletion is an intergenerational inequity. And how much of this can be pushed off onto younger generations? I mean, we have such a short horizon for these decisions, the election cycle or even the news cycle. And I'd really like to change that so that we have longer horizons and we can see that, oh, wait a second, maybe we need to have a haircut across the entire age range here. I'm not sure that's necessary, but it certainly seems like there should be some analysis of the intergenerational impact of fixing pensions or any of the other issues that are before the state.
Yeah. Thank you. We're going to move on to the next question, which is about Prop 2 and Prop 5, two propositions that are on the ballot.
Right. Prop 2 is about slavery. Prop 5 is about reproductive rights.
Yep. So what's your position on these propositions? They're both passed by the House and Senate. We expect that we'll see them on the ballot in November.
They should both pass. I think they're widely supported. I can say that I'm glad that Prop 2 was revised with Dick McCormick's effort. I think he was mostly responsible for making a little bit of a slowdown in the process. I think we've seen from the recent Supreme Court action that it'd be really good to have some backstop in the state constitutions for things like slavery or abortion. That the original text was just to eliminate all reference to slavery, which I think, as Dick McCormick pointed out, is like erasing history. But it also created the possibility that slavery would be possible in Vermont. So I thought that was a pretty good move to fix that. On Prop 5, it's good that reproductive rights are in the Constitution, but at the same time, this proposal grants state interest in reproduction that is not specified in the current law. And to me, that's an opening for who knows what, it could be anything. It doesn't even have to be related to abortion, because the proposal is broader than just abortion. So both should pass. I think we ought to look maybe at the second part of the Prop 5 after it's passed, and see if that's actually a good thing to have in the Constitution.
Interesting. The next question on citizen legislature, maybe approaches a little bit about what you're talking about, horizons, how decisions are made, how we grapple with issues in the state of Vermont. And there have been a lot of conversations and opinions going on about, should we have a citizen legislature? Should we have a professional legislature? It's nothing that's imminent. What's your thought on how the Vermont citizen legislature works, and just generally how you would address civic engagement across the state?
I hadn't heard about professionalizing the legislature, but given how well Congress works, I would say maybe that's not a great idea. The one thing I do really like is the 2-year terms for everybody, including the governor. I think that's very important. It's way better to have a scheduled 2-year election than to have 4-year terms for people, and then try to have those recall elections that start right, as soon as somebody's elected. That's anti-democratic, really.
Can I just ask, how does that jive with the idea of needing to have sort of wider horizons to meet issues like climate change, or talking about the pension? I'm just curious about that 2-year versus the 4-year, giving people a longer runway to get work done and really dig into issues.
I think if you don't know what you're planning to do by the time you're elected, it's not, something's not quite right. You should be able to hit the ground running and get something done within a year or two, and have a follow-up plan for the next 2 years. There's no evidence that politicians in Vermont have a short lifespan. I mean, once they get on the escalator, they're on the escalator, whether it's going slow or fast. And we don't throw out politicians very often. So I don't buy the whole business about needing 4 years to get something done. I think that's just convenience is the best thing I can think of, or entrenchment. Who knows?
Well, on that, I'm going to jump down to the impact question. If you hit the ground running, if you were elected governor come November, what's going to be different for the people of your district or the state as a whole because you're elected?
Right. Well, I think the war in Ukraine puts a whole new urgency on everything related to climate and the environment. And where I would have said this a year ago, 2 years ago, we need to have conservation right now and not mess around with complicated schemes to someday, 10, 20 years from now, have somewhat better infrastructure or buildings or vehicles or whatever it is. It's important to look to the far distant goal, which is zero impact. We're going to have to do way more than just get to zero carbon emissions. I mean, there's methane to worry about. There are all kinds of other atmospheric chemicals that contribute to global warming, and there's ocean acidification. There's biodiversity loss. We've got the insect apocalypse happening right now. all these things are right now. It's not 2050 that we've got to worry about. It's 2023. And so we need to address the way we live so that then once we've fixed that, because it's high consuming what we're doing right now. Any person in Vermont is a high consuming human. We need to fix that. And then we'll be able to figure out what kind of technology we need to go with that. Because it might not be a Tesla, which the moment it rolls off the assembly line has already emitted, I think, at least 4 tons of greenhouse gases, equivalent to carbon dioxide. So that's 4 tons too much.
Let's stay on this question a little longer then of climate change. And where do you think, specifically the state is in that process of mitigating climate change? Where is it working well, and how would you approach it as the governor?
Well, I've been in the energy field for a long time, energy and transportation. So I've been able to see over time the same ideas, recycled, repackaged, represented as new stuff often, but everything's old. The economists in the 70s understood the basic problems here. Atmospheric scientists understood the basic problems 100 years ago, 150, even 200 years ago. Fourier speculated about greenhouse gases and climate change. So while things are getting more refined, I guess, and there's higher precision, it may not be higher accuracy. The numbers are just, they're just converging. And then we've got these tipping points and thresholds that have already been crossed. And IPCC isn't even thinking about that, which means that the people in all of the jurisdictions, whether it's national or state, are not aware as they process the needs or the requirements of responding to the climate crisis. We're going to have to leapfrog some of that and say, whoops, we need those polar ice caps. They can't melt. They have to stay frozen. How is that going to happen? And whoops, we need to allow the oceans to recover, and they can't be acidified, and they can't be overfished. How are we going to do that? These are beyond the incremental things that have been happening so far. Plus, in Vermont, we've been in a state of self-deception for quite some time, even back into the early 90s when the Vermont Joint Owners Hydro-Quebec contract was being considered, and that was a $6 billion power sales agreement between utilities in Vermont and Hydro-Quebec. It bankrupted GMP, Citizens Utilities, and CVPS. The state, the legislature made a deliberate decision to ignore all environmental impacts associated with that power purchase agreement. And so any other source of electricity was being assessed for its environmental impact against something that was assumed to not have any impact. And that's clearly not the case for mega hydro.
Wow.
So wood chips, biomass is the same thing. Vermont assumes that biomass has no greenhouse gas emissions, and that's clearly not the case.
Yeah. So obviously, the climate seems like it's the biggest issue for you. We have about a minute left, and we didn't touch on healthcare equity, local control, and I recognize this format is a little different in that way. But so I just wonder if you want to give some closing statements And if you would like to address healthcare equity, local control in any way, I invite you to do so in your closing comments.
Yeah, that's a lot to cover.
Yep.
So I'll just say in general, I want to look at an overflowing bathtub as a problem with a valve that needs to be turned off, rather than a problem that needs more people bailing with more spoons or cups. And healthcare is a good example. And the state's interest should be that to try to keep everybody healthy, not call medical care or medical services healthcare, call them medical services, which is what they are, and go after helping everybody stay healthy and avoid to manage the demand for medical services. And we can use that lens to look at a lot of things that the state does, because the state has this tendency to create institutions or industries that fix problems, but then all of a sudden they're dependent on the problem existing. So the problem must persist in order for these people to keep working.
Well, Peter, you certainly have passion and commitment for the community, and I appreciate you showing up and being here for this Republican primary forum. And it sounds like we might see you as an independent candidate in the general election forum. This, not calling any, I'm not calling any predictions here. Sorry about that. But thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. And thank you all for watching Town Meeting TV's continued coverage of primary election season 2022. Don't forget to vote on or before August 9th.